All right, so for assignment number 2, we're going to use graphing calculators. So you're going to want the Calculate 84 app if you have an iPhone, or you can use Wabbit or a emulator for a non-iPhone, non-Apple users. So if you have an Android. So Calculate 84 looks like this. If I open it up, what I can do, skip for now, skip anyways. All right, so whatever you have on there, go ahead and clear it. Hit your y equals button, and what you're going to do under the y equals is you're going to type in your equation. So f of x equals, your x is next to the alpha button, x to the power of 3, right click so it goes off of that, plus 3x squared, squared is right above this log button over here, minus 6x minus 6. And then what we can do is we can graph it. Now, you might have to change your window on this. So if you go to your window button right now, your x scale goes from -10 to 10. Your y scale goes from -10 to 10. So go back to the graph button and we can see what this looks like. Now, I want my y scale, I want the y to go higher so I can actually see that arc there. So I'm going to go back to my window, and instead of my y max being 10, let's make it something else, like 15. Hit graph, and now I can see that whole picture. Now, how do I know it's the whole picture? Well, let's describe the end behaviors. So let's think about that question mark like we did in the first day of this, and look for your, look for your leading term. So this is in standard form, so we're good there. So this one, the leading coefficient is a positive, so we know that the right side goes up. Since this is an odd degree, the left side is going to do the opposite. With that, we know then how to describe our end behaviors. As x goes to the right and as x goes to the left, we need to describe what the y is doing. So we write it out just like we always do. As x goes to the right, when you look to the right towards positive infinity, your f of x is going towards positive infinity. When you look to the left, it's going towards negative infinity when you move to the left. So when you move to the left, it's going towards negative infinity because it's going down. Okay? Now, what you want to make sure is that you actually see those end behaviors on your graph here on the screen. So what we're going to start with is we're going to sketch this graph. So my y-axis is there in the middle. Then my x-axis is actually a little bit lower. And I'm going to make sure I show what my windows are. So I'm going to go back to my window. This over here is -10. This here is +10. So my x scale goes from -10 to 10. My y, this down here is -10. This up here is 15. Go back to your graph. And I'm just going to sketch this the best I can. One of the ways that I would suggest sketching it is actually put like where your zeros are. So I have a 0 about here, and I have a 0. It looks like it's not quite halfway. And then about a quarter of the way here. I can also see that I have a maximum in between these, way up here. And then just kind of connect the points that you see. Where does it cross the y-axis? Right about here. It keeps dipping after that, where it goes to a minimum. So you're just doing the best you can to kind of sketch exactly what you see on your phone or on your graphing calculator. Okay, so then it says to find the zeros. Now our calculator will actually find zeros for us. So if you go to second calculate, there's a 0 button. And if we click on it and hit enter, you can use your left arrow, left and right arrow, to move along that, that curve. So go to the left of it, because up here it says left bound question mark. So you want to make sure you use your left arrow to make sure you're to the left of the 0. Doesn't matter if you're under or below, you want to be to the left of the 0. Hit enter once you've hit to the left of it. Move your right arrow so that you're to the right of the 0. And it's going to locate that 0 for you. It tells you that the x is located 1.882. See, it says right here zeros. Now if you're using a graphing calculator, I'll show you what it looks like. So there's actually one more step you have to do. Okay, so I have it on there. If I go to second, calculate, I go hit the 2 for 0. I'm going to make sure that my cursor is to the left of that 0, hit enter. If I go to the right of it, I hit enter. Next it's going to say to guess, so I'm going to put my cursor as close to that 0 as possible and hit enter. And it's going to tell me this means 0. It's negative 2 times 10 to the negative 12th. So 0.00000 and then 2. So it's very, very close to 0. Your zeros at x is 1.88202, which you can see is exactly what this one over here says. X equals 1.88202. So that's one of your zeros. So we found one of them. So x equals, round to the nearest thousandth, so 3 decimal places, 1.882. That would be this first one here. Okay. Now we're going to find that next one as well. So second, trace, 0, go to the left of it, hit enter, go to the right of it, hit enter, and it tells us that this one, and actually instead of equal signs, we should be using approximate symbols because we're rounding. X is approximately at negative 0.7765, so 777 is what that's going to round to. There is a third one. X is approximately. Second, trace, 0, go to the left. This one, go to the right of it, enter, and it finds it at negative 4.105. So there are your 3 zeros that we can find with a graphing calculator. So that's more accurate than saying x is between 1 and 2. Okay, so our graphing calculator will help us find those. Relative max and mins are going to be found the exact same way. So I can see that I'm going to have a relative max here and a relative min here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my graphing calculator to estimate those. So the maximum, I'm going to hit second, calculate. 4 is for a maximum. And what it's going to do is right about there, you can see that x, where that x is on my graph here, that's showing us, I have that cursor there because that's about where the maximum is. So I'm going to go to the left of that maximum, hit enter. Then it's asking for a right bound. So I'm going to go to the right of that maximum, hit enter. And it's going to find the maximum that's within that area that I defined. So a maximum, a relative maximum, is at, and it tells you where that point is, negative 2.732, comma, 12.392. So we have that relative max. Now we're going to do the same thing, but this time we're going to click on minimum. So second, calculate. This time is a minimum, so I'm going to click 3. I'm going to find, looks like about there's where my minimum is. Zoom in for you. So I use my left and right arrows. Sorry, let me see if I can get this to focus better. There we go. A little bit better. So you can see that there's an X right here. So I'm just using the left and the right arrows in order to see where that's at. So I'm going to, right up the top it says left bound, so I'm going to go to the left of this. I'm going to hit enter. I'm going to then go to the right of where that minimum is. I'm going to hit enter. And it's going to tell me that that relative min is at 0.732, comma, negative 8.392. Now, the domain and the range here. You guys already know how to find the domain and range. We've been practicing that. However, on this case, we're not going to write y is greater than or equal to the maximum. you now know where your maximums are because you estimated it. So if you're talking about the y and it's a maximum or a minimum, you're going to use those y values in your maximum or minimum. But in this case, your domain and your range are pretty easy because this is an odd function. You look at your sketch or your graph here, your graph goes both to the left and the right. So x is an element of all real numbers. Your range goes both up and down, so y, or f of x, is an element of all real numbers. It's your odd functions that are a little bit trickier because you have to focus, do you have a minimum or do you have a maximum? So we did number 1 together. Go ahead and you can finish up 2, 3, and 4 on your own. And then I have one more thing to show you with 5, 6, and 7. It's using a program called Polysmlt. So if you go to Apps on your calculator, then down here you should have Polysmlt 2. If you have the apps on here, unfortunately, there are no, it's not going to work. They don't have that app on the Calculate 84. So if you don't have a graphing calculator to use, you're just going to find the zeros for 5, 6, and 7 exactly how you did with graphing. You only have to report the zeros, though. If you do have Polysmlt on your graph, you're going to go to Polysmlt, or on your graphing calculator, sorry. You're going to look for your roots. Roots are zeros. Hit enter. Then you're going to put the order. The order is the degree of the polynomial. So this has a degree of 3. Click on next. Oh, I guess you have to hit enter. Main. So hit 3, enter, so that it highlights 3, hit next. And then you can fill in your coefficients, and when you hit solve, it'll actually tell you what your 3 possible zeros are. Remember, if you have a degree of 3, the maximum numbers of real zeros you could have would be 3. If you have a degree of 2, your max is 2. If you have a degree of 6, your max is 6. So you can use Polysmlt to answer these, or you can use your graphing option, just like I showed you on the zeros for number 1.